The silence had teeth. Roy sat at the edge of the couch, his fingers wrapped tightly around a chipped coffee mug he had no intention of drinking from. The living room was too quiet, unnaturally so, like even the walls were holding their breath. Rehan had left an hour ago, another early morning at work, another unopened kiss goodbye. And Jordan was still here. He stood by the window, arms crossed over his chest, sunlight catching in his sharp jawline and the faded tattoo peeking from beneath his rolled-up sleeve. Neither of them had said a word since Rehan walked out. They didn't need to. The room was thick with the memory of the night before, not an act, but a moment. A brush of hands, the way their eyes had lingered too long. That electric pause right before the line almost got crossed. Almost. Roy's heart thudded against his ribs like it was trying to warn him. Or beg him. He stared into the dark swirl of coffee, bitter and cold, mirroring how he felt these days. He used to be happy. Once. Before work swallowed Rehan whole. Before their silences became louder than their laughter. Before Jordan moved back into town and started staying over, just for the weekend, and never really left. "You haven't touched your coffee," Jordan said, his voice low, edged with something dangerous. Roy didn't look up. "Wasn't thirsty." Bullshit. The word dropped like a stone between them. Roy finally glanced up. Jordan's eyes weren't soft today. They were sharp, dark, hungry. "This isn't a good idea," Roy said quietly, though he didn't sound like he believed it. "Why?" Jordan took a slow step toward him. "Because he still sleeps beside you, or because he doesn't even see you anymore?" Roy clenched the cup tighter. "Don't." "Don't what?" "Tell the truth." Another step closer. Jordan's voice was firmer now, not a question but a push. "You think I don't notice? The way you shrink every time he walks past you without looking. The way you laugh less. The way you watch me when you think I won't notice." Roy stood up so fast the cup clattered onto the table. "You don't know what you're talking about." Jordan smiled, just barely. "Don't I?" They were too close now. Roy could smell him. Soap and cigarettes and something undeniably male. His whole body screamed to step back, but his feet were treacherous. They stayed rooted. So did Jordan's eyes, unblinking, unafraid. Roy swallowed. "You're his best friend." And yet, Jordan's gaze dropped to Roy's lips, then slowly returned to his eyes. "I want you. Right now." The air left Roy's lungs in one sharp exhale. Silence again. But this one was alive, humming with guilt and need, heavy with what if. Roy opened his mouth, but nothing came out. His brain was at war with his body. Rationality screamed, but the ache in his chest, the part that had been starving for months, begged for something reckless. Something real. Jordan didn't move. He didn't need to. His words had already crossed the line they danced around for weeks. "I shouldn't," Roy finally said, the words fragile, breaking even as he said them. "But you want to," Jordan replied, soft this time. Almost tender. Roy turned away, gripping the back of the couch like it might anchor him. His heart was a drumbeat of confusion and shame. He wasn't the type to cheat. He never thought he could even be tempted. But now, standing in a room where his partner's best friend had just shattered the last illusion of innocence, Roy didn't know who he was anymore. He heard Jordan move behind him, felt the space between them tighten again. "You feel it too," Jordan said, voice low, almost a whisper in his ear. Roy closed his eyes. He did feel it. Every night Jordan stayed over, every shared glance across the dinner table, every accidental touch that lingered half a second too long. It wasn't just lust. It was something heavier, lonelier. It was the feeling of being seen after months of being invisible. Jordan's hand brushed lightly against Roy's. Barely there. Not yet crossing the line. Just existing right at the edge of it. Roy pulled away, not quickly, not harshly, but enough. "I can't," he said. "Not yet." Jordan didn't press. He simply nodded and stepped back. And that was somehow worse than if he'd tried to kiss him. Roy sat back down slowly, his heart still racing. Jordan moved to the hallway without another word. Before turning the corner, he paused. When you're done pretending you don't want more, I'll be here, he said quietly. Then he was gone, and Roy was left staring at the spilled coffee on the table, hands shaking, lips tingling with the ghost of a kiss that hadn't happened yet. The unraveling didn't begin with a kiss. It started with a look, quiet, lingering, and too intentional to be innocent. Months ago, Roy might have laughed at the idea of being unfaithful. He and Rehan had been together for nearly 4 years, their love built on solid ground. At least, that's what he used to believe. They'd had history, laughter, lazy Sundays, dreams of a life they hadn't quite built yet. But lately, Roy had been living with a stranger. Rehan had become a phantom in their home, always working, always tired, always somewhere else emotionally. Dinners were silent, mornings rushed, nights cold. Sex had become a rare obligation. Eye contact? Even rarer. So when Jordan came back into town, Roy didn't think much of it at first. Just Rehan's old college buddy, tattoos, sarcasm, a bad habit of drinking straight from the bottle. Roy rolled his eyes at him once. Jordan winked. It should have ended there. But it didn't. Rehan had invited Jordan to stay for a week. Just until he gets settled. But the week stretched into 2. Then 3. Jordan blended into their home like he belonged there, slouching on the couch with beer in hand, making himself breakfast shirtless, laughing in ways Rehan hadn't in months. At first, Roy resented him. Jordan was loud, careless, always teasing. But then came the night they shared a drink alone. Rehan had been called away to a conference. It was just the two of them in a quiet apartment. No pretense. Just silence, whiskey, and music humming softly in the background. I don't know how you do it, Jordan said, staring at Roy over the rim of his glass. Roy raised an eyebrow. Do what? Stay with someone who doesn't even look at you anymore. The sentence sliced clean through Roy's practiced indifference. He should have told Jordan off. Defended Rehan. Walked away. Instead, he laughed bitterly. You don't know the whole story. Maybe. But I know what it looks like when someone feels invisible. Roy had gone still. No one had said that out loud before. Not even him. That night they talked for hours. Not just about Rehan, but about everything. Family. Regret. Loneliness. Jordan wasn't just some reckless flirt with a sharp jawline. He was observant. Intense. And underneath the confidence was someone who knew how it felt to be forgotten. It started small after that. Roy started noticing things. How Jordan always listened, how he made Roy laugh without trying, how he filled the silences Rehan used to. And then there were the touches. Never too much. Never inappropriate. But enough to spark something Roy hadn't felt in months, awareness. A hand grazing his arm as he passed the wine. Knees brushing on the couch. Jordan leaning in a little too close when he spoke, voice low and eyes heavy. Each time, Roy told himself it was nothing. That it was innocent. Until it wasn't. One evening, Roy was cooking. Rehan was late again. Jordan hovered in the kitchen, teasing him about his poor knife skills. Roy rolled his eyes and laughed, genuinely. It had been so long since he'd heard his own laugh echo in that space. Then Jordan moved behind him to grab a glass, and his hand grazed Roy's lower back, soft, deliberate. Roy froze. He could feel Jordan's breath against his neck. Neither of them moved. For one suspended second, everything inside Roy screamed. His skin buzzed, his chest tightened, his hands trembled. But Jordan stepped away. And that's what made it worse. That restraint. That proof that Jordan knew exactly what he was doing, and exactly where the line was. After that, things changed. The air between them was never casual again. Every conversation dripped with subtext. Every silence begged to be broken. Roy started dreaming about him. Woke up sweating, aching with guilt and craving. And through it all, Rehan remained absent, physically there, emotionally vacant. He didn't notice the way Roy flinched when he touched him. He didn't notice how often Roy stared out the window after Jordan left a room. Or maybe he did and just chose not to care. Roy didn't know what scared him more, Jordan's growing boldness or his own slow surrender. He'd always thought infidelity was about betrayal, about lust, about moral failure. But this wasn't just about sex. It was about feeling. Jordan made him feel like he mattered. Like he wasn't just existing in the background of someone else's life. And that scared the hell out of him. One night, Jordan knocked on his bedroom door. Rehan was out of town again. Roy opened it, half expecting him to make another smart remark. Instead, Jordan looked serious. "I'm not going to do anything you don't want," he said. "But I need you to stop pretending this isn't happening. At least be honest with yourself." Roy didn't reply. He couldn't, because honesty meant admitting the truth. He wanted something more. And it wasn't coming from the man he was supposed to love. Roy stood frozen. Jordan's words still hung in the air like heat. "I want you. Right now." It wasn't a joke. Not a tease. Not a test. He said it with intent. With need. With eyes that burned right through Roy's defenses. Roy's pulse thundered in his ears. He opened his mouth, but no sound came. His thoughts fractured, loyalty, guilt, memory, craving, all swirling inside him, colliding like a storm. He knew this moment would come. He just never thought he'd stand still in it. Jordan stepped closer, slowly, carefully, like approaching a scared animal. His voice dropped to a whisper. "Roy, I'm not trying to mess things up, but I'm done pretending I don't want you." Roy backed into the edge of the couch. He didn't trust his body. Not the way it reacted to Jordan's presence, how his skin prickled, how his lips ached to be touched. "You can't say things like that," Roy finally said, voice raw, cracking in places. "You're his best friend." Jordan let out a humorless laugh. "And he's your boyfriend. But when's the last time he really saw you, Roy? Not just out of obligation. Really saw you." Roy didn't answer. He couldn't. Because the truth was, Rehan hadn't looked at him like that in over a year. But Jordan, he was looking now. Like Roy was wanted. Like he was worth wanting. Jordan's hand moved, slow, open. Not grabbing, not pulling. Just hovering, giving Roy the space to step back. He didn't. Instead, he closed the gap. Their mouths met in a kiss that wasn't soft or cautious. It was starved. Desperate. It carried every suppressed glance, every breathless almost, every lonely night Roy had spent convincing himself he was fine. Jordan's hand slid to the small of Roy's back, anchoring him. Roy's fingers tangled in Jordan's shirt like he needed something to hold on to. Every second deepened the heat. Every second screamed of things that couldn't be undone. Clothes came off in a trail of urgency. Shirts flung, jeans pushed down, breath stolen between skin and sweat. They fell onto the couch, bodies pressing together like puzzle pieces that had waited too long to fit. It wasn't perfect. It was messy, gripping, raw. But God, it was real. Roy gasped Jordan's name like a confession. Jordan whispered his like a promise. And when it was over, silence returned, but this time it was weighted with aftermath. They lay tangled for a moment, bare skin to bare skin, breaths sinking slowly. Roy stared at the ceiling, heart still galloping. "I didn't mean for it to happen like this," Jordan murmured, brushing fingers along Roy's ribs. Roy didn't respond. He couldn't. His throat felt thick, like it was filled with cement. Because now it had happened. The line they'd spent months dancing around had been crossed, and not just stepped over, but obliterated. He sat up, running a hand through his hair. "I need to go." Jordan sat up behind him, touching his arm gently. "Roy. I need space," he said, not turning around. "I need to breathe." He dressed quickly, avoiding Jordan's eyes. The room that had just held passion now held the sharp sting of betrayal. The guilt crept in like smoke, thick and suffocating. Jordan stood, fully naked, vulnerable in a way Roy hadn't seen before. "I don't regret it. I want you to know that." Roy stopped at the door. He looked back for half a second, just long enough to catch the ache in Jordan's expression. Then he left. The cold air outside hit him like a slap. He walked the 10 blocks home in a daze, heart pounding in his chest like a drum of war. Each step replayed what just happened. Each breath was a mix of shame and something terrifyingly close to satisfaction. The apartment was dark. Rehan was asleep on the bed, back turned, phone still glowing on the nightstand. Roy stood at the doorway and just stared. He should feel broken. He should feel sick. Instead, he felt conflicted. Because, for the first time in months, he felt something. The ache, the guilt, the twisted mess of emotion clawing at his chest, that was more alive than anything he'd felt in Rehan's arms in over a year. He stripped quietly and slid into bed. Rehan didn't stir. The space between them felt colder than ever. Roy stared at the ceiling in silence. What had he done? What would happen next? The truth was coming, soon. But not tonight. Tonight, all he had was silence. And the echo of a voice that still haunted him. I want you. Right now. The morning after felt sterile. Roy sat across from Rehan at the kitchen table, the ticking wall clock doing most of the talking. Rehan scrolled through his phone, one hand wrapped lazily around a mug of coffee, the other answering emails. His face was unreadable, exhausted but indifferent, exactly the same as it had been for months. And for the first time, Roy couldn't take it anymore. I need to talk to you, Roy said, his voice low, shaking with something deeper than nerves, truth. Rehan barely looked up. Now. Yes. Now. A pause. Rehan set the phone down and finally met Roy's eyes. Something flickered behind them. Wariness? Resignation? He didn't speak. Roy took a breath that rattled in his chest. I did something. Last night. Silence again. This one didn't have teeth, it had fangs. Rehan blinked slowly, his face unreadable. With who? Roy hesitated. He could lie. Blur the name. Protect Jordan. Protect himself. But he didn't. Jordan. The silence broke like glass. Rehan's face twitched. He stood slowly, like the ground beneath him had shifted. His voice dropped, cold and sharp. You slept with Jordan? Roy nodded once. No excuses. No backtracking. Rehan laughed, but it wasn't humor. It was disbelief and fury mixing into something uglier. My best friend? Are you fucking kidding me? I didn't plan it. Oh, that makes it better? Rehan stepped back, running both hands through his hair, pacing now. You didn't plan it? What, was it an accident? You slipped and fell into him. Roy flinched. Rehan, please. No. No, I need to hear this, he snapped. You've been lying to my face for how long? Weeks? Months? I wasn't lying. I was, Roy stopped. What was he doing? Defending the indefensible? I was lonely, he finally admitted. You stopped seeing me. You stopped touching me. I didn't feel like I mattered to you anymore. And so you just what? Let him replace me? Rehan shouted. No. Roy's voice cracked. He didn't replace you. He noticed me. Rehan stopped moving. The words hung between them, thick with finality. The look on Rehan's face changed. Not just anger now. Betrayal. Deep and complete. I gave everything to this relationship, he said, quieter now. Worked late so we could afford to move out of that shitty apartment. Took extra shifts to save for a future you said you wanted. And you were just slipping away behind my back. Roy felt the sting of those words like a blade. I wasn't trying to leave you, Roy whispered. I just wanted to feel something again. Rehan stared at him. For a long time. Then he said, I'm going to stay at my brother's for a few days. He didn't slam the door. He didn't scream. He just walked out. And that was worse than rage. That was final. The days that followed were quiet in the loudest way. Roy avoided the mirror, the walls, the memories. He didn't text Jordan. Couldn't. Not yet. But Jordan texted him. You okay? I'm not sorry for what happened. But I'm sorry for how much it hurt you. I'm here. Whenever you're ready. Roy read the messages in bed, the glow of the screen lighting up his guilt. He didn't respond. Not until 3 days later, when he found himself standing outside the cafe where they first talked alone. Jordan was already inside, leaning back in a booth, his eyes dark with questions. Roy sat down across from him, nervous energy buzzing beneath his skin. Jordan didn't speak first this time. He waited. Roy sighed. Everything's falling apart. I figured. I told him. I didn't lie. Jordan nodded slowly. How bad? Bad enough that he walked out without packing a bag. Jordan's jaw tensed. I never wanted to destroy what you had. I couldn't keep pretending I didn't want more. I know, Roy whispered. They sat in silence. Not heavy this time, more like a pause between thoughts. I miss you, Jordan said quietly. Roy looked up. We didn't even get a chance to know what this was. Maybe now we can. Roy didn't answer right away. The ache in his chest hadn't faded, it was just quieter now. He reached across the table and touched Jordan's hand. Not a promise. Not an apology. Just a moment of truth. I need time, he said. Jordan nodded. I'm not going anywhere. Later that night, Roy sat alone in his apartment, Rehan's scent still lingering on a pillow, Jordan's warmth still buzzing in his palm. Everything had changed, and yet something inside him had finally awakened. A truth, a clarity, a consequence. He wasn't proud of what he did, but he was done pretending it hadn't happened. Love was messy. It didn't play fair. It didn't follow the rules. But silence? Silence was the loudest kind of betrayal, and sometimes, breaking it was the only way to feel alive again.